Queen Verin stood on the balcony of her palace, staring out at the frozen desert. Red sand stretched to the horizon. Sharp winds carried dust that cut like tiny knives. The palace walls rose like tall cliffs of pale stone, carved long ago by her ancestors. Guards in silver armor stood at attention behind her, each face masked and unreadable. Verin felt no pride. Her heart was as cold as the land she ruled. No laughter came to her halls. No songs drifted through her gardens, if gardens could even grow here. Once, the palace had bloomed with crystal flowers and bright fountains. Now empty courtyards and hollow fountains stood as silent witnesses to her grief. She turned away from the view and walked down the marble corridor. Tapestries hung along the walls, fading with age. The threads once held scenes of joy. Children chasing fireflies, dancers spinning beneath colored lights. Now the scenes felt too distant, like memories from another life. In her private chambers, a small statue waited. It was a crystal sculpture of a weeping mother, tears sealed within its form. Verin touched the smooth surface with her slender fingers. She had placed it here long ago, hoping it would capture her sorrow. But over time, both the statue's tears and her own had dried. The queen sighed. In this land, tears were a sign of weakness. She had learned to hide her pain. She wore a mask of strength each day. Advisors praised her unbroken calm. Citizens bowed in respect. Yet, when she closed her eyes at night, a hollow ache pressed behind her ribs. A soft chime echoed through the room. Verin raised an eyebrow. Visitors were rare. The only regular pursuers of her time were ministers and generals, each seeking favor or approval. She glanced at the door. A chamberlain stepped in, bowing low. "Your Majesty," he said in a voice as smooth as glass, "the envoy from the Terran Alliance has arrived at the main gate." Verin's chest tightened. Humans. She had heard legends of them. Blue sky worlds, water in endless rivers, forests so dense they hid entire cities. She had wondered if they existed, or if they were just a star-born myth. "Send him in," she said softly. Her voice echoed in the quiet chamber. The chamberlain bowed again and left. Verin's heart beat faster, an unfamiliar sensation. Moments later, a tall figure entered. She wore a pale uniform with wrench and star emblems stitched on the chest. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple braid. She carried no weapon. Her posture was steady, respectful. Queen Verin studied the newcomer. The envoy knelt, head bowed. The room felt strangely warm. For a long moment, neither woman spoke. Only the soft hum of the palace sustained the silence. Then Verin lifted her chin. She would learn why this human had come. And perhaps, in this strange meeting, something new might stir within her frozen heart. Mara Hayes stood on the palace steps, her boots crunching on pale stone. A chill wind whipped around her, carrying the sharp scent of dust and cold metal. She kept her shoulders straight and her gaze steady. Behind her, the human ship gleamed under the pale sun. It was small but strong, built for long journeys between stars. At the base of the steps, 2 guards blocked the entrance. Their armor shone like polished silver. Their helmets hid their faces, leaving only narrow slits for eyes. Mara raised her hand in greeting. "I come in peace," she said clearly. Her voice carried across the silent courtyard. One guard nudged the other. The second guard spoke, voice low and firm. "State your purpose, Terran." Mara nodded. "I am Captain Mara Hayes of Earth. I seek friendship and knowledge. I offer aid to Queen Verin." The guards exchanged a glance. Then the first guard gestured upward. "She will see you now." Mara climbed the final steps and entered the great hall. Tall columns rose on each side, supporting a vaulted ceiling painted in faded blue and gold. At the far end, Queen Verin sat on her throne of carved stone. Verin's robes were deep crimson, trimmed with silver. Her face was calm, but her dark eyes held sharp curiosity. Mara bowed deeply. "Your Majesty." Verin inclined her head slightly. "Captain Hayes, you claim to seek friendship. Yet your people are distant stars away. Why come now? Mara rose and took a careful step forward. Your world shows signs of drought and silence. The Terran Alliance can help. We bring fresh water seeds, small crystals that grow living water. We also carry knowledge of agriculture and medicine. A murmur passed through the court. Advisors leaned toward each other, eyes wide. Some faces showed hope. Others showed anger. Varen's gaze remained on Mara. Water seeds, she repeated softly. Legends say they can bloom rivers overnight. Why would you share such power? Mara met the queen's eyes. Because every world matters. Because joy, laughter, and life thrive where water flows. Our peoples can learn from each other. The queen's guard shifted. One strong soldier rested his hand on the hilt of his blade. Another narrowed her eyes at Mara's uniform. Suddenly, a court minister rose. He was tall and thin, with a narrow face. Your Majesty, these humans are tricksters. They come with gifts, then take our wealth. They want our crystals and our lands. A ripple of agreement rose. Some nobles nodded, voices low but firm in their protests. Mara held up her hand. Please, she said, I ask only to help. No cost, no strings. Varen raised a delicate finger, and silence fell. She stood slowly from her throne. Her robes brushed the floor. She walked toward Mara, each step echoing in the hall. When she stood before the human, the air felt warmer. Mara felt her heart beat faster. Varen's face was unreadable. For one tense moment, it seemed the queen might turn away. Then Varen spoke, her voice soft but clear. You may stay for 3 cycles of our moon. Show me your water seeds. Prove your purpose is true. Mara bowed again, relief blooming inside her. Thank you, Your Majesty. As guards stepped aside, Mara followed the queen from the hall. Outside, the pale sun dipped low, painting the stone walls in soft gold. A fragile hope began to grow in Mara's chest, hope that she could bring joy back to the queen's frozen world. Mara followed Queen Varen through a winding corridor lit by pale lanterns. The air smelled of cool stone and distant fires. As they walked, the clatter of armored footsteps echoed behind them. The queen's guard moved in a silent line, swords at their sides and eyes on Mara. They reached a large chamber with a high ceiling. At the center stood a raised platform where a single guard waited. His armor was darker than the others, and his posture was rigid. He held a long spear that gleamed under the lantern light. Varen stopped before him. Ensign Chorus, the queen said. Her voice held respect. This is Captain Mara Hayes of Earth. She seeks to help our people. Chorus studied Mara without speaking. His helmet hid his face, but his stillness spoke of warning. 2 more guards flanked the room's entrance, their hands resting on their spears. Mara bowed. I am honored to meet you, Ensign. Chorus's gaze didn't waver. He turned to the queen. Your Majesty, if this human is a threat, allow me to test her. Varen hesitated. Mara felt a chill run through her veins. She had known customs here might be strange. Yet she nodded. Very well. But test her with honor. Chorus stepped forward. He gestured to a nearby training field. Through an open archway, Mara saw a wide courtyard with stone targets and practice dummies. Cold winds swept in, rustling sand. The queen and her guard followed. Mara took a steady breath. She had no illusions. This world was harsh, but she trusted her skills. Chorus led the way. He placed a wooden sword on a stand. Then he pointed to a stone dummy carved like a warrior. Defeat it, he commanded. Show your strength. Mara looked at the wooden sword. She had practiced with such weapons on Earth. She knelt, picked up the sword, and tested its weight. It felt lighter than a real blade. Chorus raised his spear. Begin. Mara rose and moved forward. Her boots crunched on the formless sand. She remembered her training. She aimed for the dummy's waist, then swung in a smooth arc. The sword struck wood with a loud crack. The dummy's arm fell away. The guard to her right frowned. Chorus nodded once and stepped closer. He held out a heavier sword. The blade was real, cold metal with runes etched along its length. Mara's heart beat faster. She lifted the sword and felt its weight in her hand. She steadied her stance. The queen watched without expression. Chorus raised his spear again. To fend. He lunged. Mara blocked with the sword's flat side. The impact jolted her arm. She retreated one step and swung low. The spear's tip scraped the ground. She twisted the sword around and struck the spear shaft, knocking Chorus off balance. He recovered and raised his spear high. Mara raised her sword. She felt calm. Then she ducked under his thrust and pushed forward. The sword's blade scraped Chorus's shoulder plate. He stumbled back. Chorus lowered his spear. His helmet turned toward the queen. For a moment, silence filled the courtyard. Then he lowered his weapon fully. Queen Varen spoke softly, voice clear in the cold air. She fought with skill and honor. Mara dropped the sword and bowed deeply. Chorus blinked in surprise but returned to formation. The queen nodded to Mara. "You have passed the test," Varen said. Her dark eyes sparkled for the first time. "Tomorrow, we begin with the water seeds." Mara stood, hope lighting her face. The guards stood aside, and the queen led her back into the palace. The wind faded behind them, carrying promises of a thaw in the frozen kingdom. Morning light filtered through narrow windows, painting the palace corridors in gold. Queen Varen led Mara through quiet halls to a small chamber. Guards stood outside the door. Inside, a single pedestal held a crystalline vase carved from pale stone. It was empty and cold. Mara stepped forward, curiosity in her eyes. "Your Majesty, what is this?" Varen's lips curved in a small smile. "This is the Turles vase. It has stood empty for a century. Once it held living water, tears of joy and grief. Now, no drop remains." Mara bowed her head. "I am honored to stand here." She reached into her satchel and took out a small blue-green crystal no larger than her palm. It glowed with a soft pulse. She placed it gently in her other hand. Varen watched closely as Mara spoke softly. "These are water seeds. On my world, they grow life where water is scarce." Mara pressed the seed to the vase's rim. The crystal hummed, then shattered into dust. A single droplet formed where the seed touched the stone. It glowed briefly, then settled into the vase. Varen gasped, her hand rising to her lips. The court guard outside exchanged astonished looks. The queen's eyes glistened as the water spread, filling the vase halfway in moments. Mara knelt. "This water is pure and living. It carries hope and joy. Share it with your people, and new life will follow." Varen reached out and lifted the vase. She held it close to her heart as tears formed in her eyes. The crystal flowers in her chambers, long silent, began to unfurl. Their petals opened, revealing bright blue centers that matched the water's hue. Tears trickled down Varen's cheeks. She closed her eyes, tasting memories she thought lost. The room felt warmer. Birds sang outside, their song echoing through open windows. An advisor hurried in. His eyes widened at the sight of the vase and the blooming flowers. "Your Majesty, what miracle is this?" Varen's voice broke the silence. "This is compassion from another world." She turned to Mara. "Thank you for bringing me this gift." Mara stood and bowed. "I only followed my heart, Your Majesty. May this water heal your kingdom." Outside the palace, gardeners carried water in simple vessels and sprinkled it across hardened ground. Tiny shoots sprouted, pushing through the red sand. People gathered in the streets, cheering as green life returned. Queen Varen stepped onto her balcony, the Turles vase at her side. She looked down at her subjects. Children laughed as they chased each other around newly grown palms. Farmers knelt to touch fresh grass. The queen's lips curved into a true smile, one that crinkled her eyes with genuine warmth. Mara watched from behind the queen. Her mission had begun. But its first success felt like a triumph. She placed a hand on Varen's shoulder. "You brought joy back to your world," Varen said softly. Mara nodded. "And your joy will spread beyond this desert. Together, we can bring life to every corner of your realm." The queen lifted her gaze to the horizon, where red sand met blue sky. For the first time in her reign, hope glowed in her heart, bright as the living water that filled her tearless face. In the days after the water gift, Queen Varen's palace hummed with new life. Crystal flowers unfurled in every corner. Fresh water pooled in stone basins. Guards exchanged smiles. Even the silent corridors seemed to breathe. Each morning, Mara walked with Varen through palace gardens that now glowed with green and blue hues. The queen listened to Mara's stories of earth, gentle rain pattering on roofs, children splashing in puddles, farmers tending rice fields in warm sun. Mara spoke of laughter shared under open skies and festivals, where people danced in colorful clothes. Varen's lips curved in wonder. "On earth, tears fall in rain?" she asked one day. Mara nodded. "Yes, tears and rain both bring life. We celebrate when they come." That evening, the queen stood alone in her private courtyard. The first moon of the season rose, pale and silver. Varen held a bowl of living water in her hands. She whispered, "Show me the meaning of joy." From behind a marble fountain, Mara emerged carrying a small device. It hummed softly. "On earth, we share songs to celebrate," she said. She placed the device on a pedestal. With a press, soft music began. Simple notes of strings and drums, gentle and bright. Varen listened, her eyes closing as the melody filled the night air. Flowers around them swayed as if dancing. For a moment, the queen felt weightless, free from her sorrow. Suddenly, footsteps echoed. The queen's guard appeared, stepping into the garden. Soldiers knelt, heads bowed. "Your Majesty, a celebration awaits," their leader announced. "The people have gathered in the plaza. They wish to honor you and the Terran envoy." Varen smiled. "Then we shall go." She offered her arm to Mara. The human took it with a respectful nod. They walked through the palace gates into the central plaza. Torches lined the walls, and people filled the space, citizens of every age and rank. Children waved small flags painted with water droplets. Musicians stood ready with stringed instruments. An elder stepped forward, his beard silver like moonlight. He held a simple clay cup filled with water. "Your Majesty," he intoned, "you have given us life again. And you, honored guest, have shown a kindness we thought lost. We invite you both to drink and join our song." Varen lifted the cup and sipped the water. Joy sparkled in her eyes as she handed it to Mara. The envoy drank and smiled. Then the musicians played the melody again. Citizens joined in, humming first, then singing in clear, hopeful voices. Mara glanced at Varen. The queen's face was alight with emotion. Tears flowed freely, glinting in torchlight. She laughed, a sound as rare as rain in the desert. The people cheered, their voices rising like a wave. In that moment, Varen realized that joy was not a weakness but a gift to share. She raised her voice above the crowd. "Let our worlds learn from each other," she declared. "May water, music, and hope bind us together." Under the twin moons, human and alien stood side by side. As the singing grew louder, Varen's heart opened. Laughter and tears mingled, echoing across the plaza and into every hidden corner of her kingdom. For the first time in a lifetime, the queen felt truly alive. Days after the grand celebration, palace life settled into a hopeful routine. Crystal flowers glowed at dawn. Farmers tended new gardens beyond the walls. Yet Queen Varen sensed tension in the air. As the sun set, she met Mara in the throne room. Torches flickered, casting long shadows. Advisors read reports by lantern light. Varen's trusted minister, Lord Kender, approached with a grim face. "Your Majesty, troubling news," Kender said quietly. "Lord Zurek gathers forces in the north. He claims the water seeds weaken our traditions and that the human is a spy. Varen frowned. She had hoped Zarek's loyalty remained. She turned to Mara. "Have you seen this man?" she asked softly. Mara shook her head. "No, but I will help you find the truth." That night, Mara and 2 guards rode north beyond the palace gates. The moon lit their path through rocky passes. Wind howled in narrow canyons, carrying distant drums of marching soldiers. At dawn, they reached Zarek's camp. Tents clustered around a tall pavilion where Zarek stood on a dais. His black armor gleamed under the sun. Around him, soldiers held pikes and banners of red and gold. Mara dismounted. Guards followed. Zarek's lieutenant, a stern-faced woman, blocked their path. "You are the Terran envoy," she said coldly. "Leave now, or we will force you." Mara held up a hand. "I seek only peace." She stepped forward and raised her voice so everyone could hear. "Queen Varen trusted me. I give no orders. I help her people." Zarek smiled, a cruel curve of lips. "Help," he mocked. "You brought alien seeds to my land. You change our world without our consent." Mara met his gaze. "I offered help because your queen asked. Water brings life. Traditions cannot survive on dust." The soldiers shifted. Murmurs rose. Zarek's lieutenant tightened her grip on her sword. Suddenly, Zarek raised a heavy hand. "Seize them." Guards lunged toward Mara. Her 2 protectors drew swords. A brief clash rang out. Steel on steel. Mara backed away, keeping her hands open. She spoke over the noise. "Your queen chooses compassion over fear. Will you let anger govern your heart?" The camp fell quiet. Soldiers paused, lowering weapons. Zarek's face darkened. He stepped down from his dais and walked to Mara, sword in hand. He towered above her, blade pointed at her feet. "Leave now," he hissed. "Return to your ship and never come back." Mara stood tall. "I will leave if Varen commands it. Until then, I remain her guest." Zarek glared, then threw his sword aside. He turned back to his soldiers. "Prepare to march on the palace. Show the queen how weakness destroys a kingdom." As the banners rose, Mara signaled her guards. They rode back to the palace, heart heavy. Behind them, dawn broke over Zarek's camp, an omen of war. Upon their return, Mara found Varen pacing the grand hall. The queen's face was pale. Guard officers knelt in a circle, reporting the threat. Varen's dark eyes met Mara's. He chooses war to hide his fear. Mara placed a hand on the queen's arm. "Then together, we will defend your people." Varen nodded. "Prepare the guard. Tonight, we stand against the shadow of the past and fight for our future." Night draped the palace like a velvet cloak. Torches burned along the walls, casting dancing shadows. Queen Varen stood in the war room, a circular chamber lined with maps and battle plans. Officers knelt before a large table, their voices hushed as they spoke of strategy. Mara Hayes entered quietly, accompanied by Ensign Chorus and 2 loyal guards. Chorus bowed his head in respect. Mara met the queen's steady gaze. "Your Majesty," Mara began, "Zarek marches at dawn. His forces are strong, but they lack the will to fight for fear alone." Varen turned to the map. Red tokens marked Zarek's position in the north. Blue tokens surrounded the palace walls. Varen's loyal guard. She tapped a finger on the map. "Our walls are high, but our numbers are smaller. We need a plan that outsmarts force with heart." Chorus spoke, voice low. "We could guard every gate and wait for Zarek's army to tire, but civilians will suffer." Mara stepped forward. "We should defend the gates where most soldiers gather. Then send small teams to open secret tunnels beneath the city. We can flank them from behind." The officers exchanged looks. One shook his head. "The tunnels are old and unstable. Many have collapsed." Varen's eyes narrowed. "Then we will clear the rubble. Tonight, volunteers will work in shifts. At dawn, we strike. A captain knelt and bowed. Your wisdom guides us, Your Majesty. Varen turned to Mara. You show courage and care for my people. I trust your judgment. She lifted her chin. But I must lead them. I cannot hide behind walls. Mara's heart tightened. Your place is with your people. You inspire them. Varen pressed her hand to the map. Then I will stand at the highest gate. My guard will defend me. My people will see their queen fight. Chorus stepped forward. I will lead the tunnel teams myself. He nodded to the guards beside Mara. Captain Hayes, will you guide our forces at the east gate? Mara nodded firmly. Yes, Ensign. We will hold that gate until the tunnels open behind the enemy. Varen studied Mara's face. I ask more of you than any envoy. Her voice trembled with emotion. Will you stand and fight beside us? Mara met her gaze without fear. I came to help. I will fight for you and your people. The queen's lips curved in a small, proud smile. She turned to her officers. Prepare the troops. Share food and water quickly. We march to every gate at first light. Volunteers to the tunnels. A cheer rose from the assembled warriors. Torches flared as officers relayed orders. Soldiers clasped weapons and headed out into the night. Varen watched as her people moved with renewed purpose. She placed a hand on Mara's shoulder. Thank you, friend. Tonight, we reclaim our hope. Mara squeezed the queen's hand. Tomorrow, we bring joy back stronger than ever. Behind them, the war room buzzed with activity. In the silent moment before battle, human and alien stood side by side, ready to defend a future built on trust and courage. Dawn broke in pale pink over the palace walls. Soldiers gathered at each gate, shields raised and spears ready. Queen Varen stood at the highest east gate, Mara beside her with a small unit of human and alien warriors. Across the courtyard, Zarek's army marched in tight formation. Red and gold banners snapped in the wind. Their drums beat a steady march, echoing through the stone corridors. Varen raised her sword. For our people, she called. Mara answered, for hope and life. The gates opened with a clang. Enemies flooded through the entrance. Spears met shields as guards fought fiercely. Mara swung her blade in a wide arc, driving back 2 soldiers. Her training on Earth proved strong here. An alien guard at her side blocked a strike aimed at the queen. Varen moved like a dancer, blade flashing. Her guard formed a circle around her, protecting the queen with unwavering loyalty. Despite hunger and cold nights, their determination shone. Suddenly, a trumpet sounded from the west gate. Zarek had sent reinforcements. Mara glanced at Varen, then to Chorus leading the tunnel teams. Dust rose behind the enemy ranks as stones fell from above. Collapsed tunnels meant to trap them. Confusion struck Zarek's forces. Soldiers stumbled, cutting their own lines. Mara seized the chance. Now, she shouted. She led her unit in a charge through the gate, flanking Zarek's front line. Varen saw the enemy falter. She pressed forward, sword raised high. The guards beside her fought back with renewed vigor. One guard knocked an enemy back into the courtyard, while another drove her blade past a soldier's shield. On the field, Mara faced Zarek's lieutenant. Their swords clashed, sparks flying where steel met steel. The lieutenant was strong, but Mara's resolve was stronger. With a swift move, Mara disarmed her opponent. She held her sword at the lieutenant's throat. Yield, Mara commanded. The lieutenant's eyes widened. She dropped to one knee and bowed her head. Mara spared her life. Life to build peace, she said. Back at the east gate, Varen spotted Zarek himself charging toward the queen. His sword aimed straight for her heart. The queen braced, but Mara stepped between them, blocking the blow with her blade. The force knocked Mara backward. Varen rushed to her side, driving her sword past Zarek's guard into his side. He gasped and dropped his weapon. His dark eyes widened as he fell to one knee. Varen stood before him. This ends now, she said. Leave our kingdom and never return. Zarek bowed his head. Guards on both sides lowered their weapons. The battle stilled. Mara rose, brushing dust from her clothes. The soldiers looked to the queen. Verin lifted her sword overhead in a sign of victory. A cheer rose from the palace walls and echoed across the courtyard. Mara and Verin stood side by side, swords raised. The morning sun gleamed on their blades. In that moment, human and alien found strength in unity. The shadows of the past lay broken, and a new dawn of hope rose over the kingdom. After the battle, the plaza lay quiet but for soft murmurs of relief. Soldiers tended to the wounded on both sides. Some laid down their weapons, guided by guards into makeshift tents. The banners of red and gold were lowered and replaced with blue flags bearing the queen's emblem. A single drop of living water. Queen Verin and Mara walked through the aftermath. Crystal flowers, broken in places of battle, were carefully reattached by palace gardeners. Verin knelt beside a shattered blossom and pressed living water from her palm onto its petals. The flower mended and glowed softly once more. Mara handed the queen a small water seed from her pouch. "Plant this near the old fountain," she suggested. "It will bring life back faster there." Verin nodded. They moved to the center of the plaza where an ancient fountain stood dry and cracked. Together, they planted the crystal seed at its base. Soil shifted as the seed sank into the earth. Within moments, water bubbled up, filling the fountain with clear, singing streams. Children ran forward, their laughter echoing off the stone walls. They dipped their hands into the flowing water, splashing each other in delight. The queen smiled warmly, tears glistening in her eyes. Mara joined in, letting cool droplets fall onto her face. Nearby, Chorus and the palace engineers examined the secret tunnels. They cleared debris and prepared safe pathways for fresh water to flow into the city's wells. Citizens gathered at wellheads, cupping their hands as water gushed forth for the first time in years. An elder approached Verin, leaning on a carved staff. "Your Majesty," he said softly, "our world bows to your courage and the kindness of your guest." Verin placed a hand on the elder's shoulder. "It takes all of us, human and alien, to heal what was broken." She turned to Mara. "Your friendship has brought back more than water. You have given us hope." Mara shook her head. "You had the strength all along. I only lent a hand." She looked over the plaza, now alive with chatter and play. "This is what I came for." Verin's guard formed ranks along the plaza's edges, offering water and food to villagers who arrived from distant districts. The queen watched as soldiers and citizens worked side by side. Even those who fought against her now carried stones and tools to rebuild walls and homes. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, Verin and Mara climbed the palace steps to the balcony. Below them, lanterns were lit around the plaza, and families gathered to eat and share stories of the day's events. Verin lifted a crystal cup filled with living water. "To new beginnings," she called. Mara raised her cup. "To friendship between our worlds." They drank, and the water tasted of fresh spring and morning dew. A cool breeze carried the promise of peace. Far below, the palace gardens bloomed where once there was only dust. Walls were mended, and the laughter of children replaced the hush of sorrow. Queen Verin placed a hand on Mara's arm. "Will you stay, Captain Hayes? Help us build a stronger realm." Mara glanced at the gathering, faces bright with gratitude and joy. She smiled. "I will stay as long as you need me, Your Majesty." Under the twin moons, human and alien stood together, looking forward to a future where tears would flow freely. Tears of joy, unity, and hope. Weeks passed, and the kingdom transformed. Gardens spread beyond palace walls. Crystal flowers lined every path. Wells brimmed with living water. Vibrant green forests grew where red sand once lay. The people worked together, aliens and humans side by side. On a gentle morning, Queen Verin and Captain Mara Hayes met in the palace's highest tower. Through tall windows, they watched children play beneath water fountains. Birds built nests in blooming trees. The air felt fresh and alive. Varin held a small vial of living water, gifted by Mara before she came. Your people call this spring water, Mara explained. They say it carries the memory of every place it has been. The queen smiled as she tipped the vial's last drop into a newly carved fountain below. Water splashed, and the fountain's tiles glowed with soft light. Our kingdom will remember this moment always. Mara nodded. You showed me your world. It taught me more than any star chart. Varin looked at the human with warmth in her dark eyes. You brought more than water. You brought hope, friendship, and joy. A gentle knock sounded at the door. Ensign Chorus entered, bowing. Beside him stood Lord Zarek, no armor on his shoulders, and regret in his eyes. Your Majesty, Captain, Zarek began quietly. I come to pledge my loyalty. I was wrong to doubt you, and wrong to bring war. I ask forgiveness. The Queen regarded him in silence. Citizens and soldiers had gathered behind Zarek at the tower's base, watching. Varin stepped forward. She set a hand on Zarek's arm. Strength without compassion is hollow. You have learned this lesson. Rise and stand with us. Zarek's face shone with relief. He knelt before the queen, then rose and bowed to Mara. And to you, envoy of another world. Thank you. Cheers echoed as Zarek joined the group. Mara and Varin led them to the balcony, where a new banner flew above the palace gates, two intertwined rings of water and stone. Below, the people cheered. Music filled the air, both alien instruments and earth melodies. Children danced in circles, laughter rising like birdsong. Mara turned to Varin. Your kingdom shines brighter than any star I have seen. Varin reached out and took Mara's hand. And your courage shines within our hearts. They stood together, watching the city celebrate. In that moment, boundaries between worlds faded. Human and alien shared one sky, one hope. As the sun set in hues of gold and crimson, Varin spoke softly. Let every drop of water carry our promise of peace. Mara bowed her head. And let every story we share remind us of this bond. Under twin moons, the people feasted. Stories of the queen's tears and the human's gifts spread across the realm. Fires burned in hearths and hearts, lighting a future where joy flowed as freely as water. Queen Varin and Captain Mara Hayes stood side by side, two leaders of different worlds bound by trust. Together, they had brought back her joy and forged a friendship that would never fade.